That sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Electin Kuzo. I'll be chairing this conversation alongside Dr. Radido, who is going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself before I get to introduce our guest today, Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya. So, Doctor, can you kindly introduce yourself?
Well, thank you so much, Electin. I'm so glad to be here today. This is the moment I've been waiting for. I always get excited when we get around this time when we find an opportunity to discuss and look at a few issues here and there. My name is Dosso Redido, Operations and Strategy Director at Zion Fall Publishers, and a co-host for today's conversation. Thank you so much and welcome everybody.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction of yourself. Before we get to introduce our guest, this conversation is brought to you by Zenpal Publishers and the She Leads Project. So I'll just say a little bit about our guest, Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya. So she is a life and business coach, a speaker, an entrepreneur, and an author with over 30 years of experience. She helps people design the lives they really want through coaching, workshop, speaking, and self-taught online courses. So before I could say everything else. I'm just going to give the guest to get to introduce herself better because she is the one who understands herself better. So Dr. Jackie, can you please introduce yourself for us?
Um, Thank you, Electi, and thank you, Duso, and everybody who has joined us. So, as Electi has said, I am a coach, and I work mostly with people who are looking to begin their businesses, so early stage entrepreneurs. I also work with people who are looking to develop their careers, and I also just love working with people who feel that they need some movement in their life. So if you're feeling stuck or you're facing major transition or you need to make a big decision or those situations where you just feel like you need some guidance. So I like to really work with people to help them really discover the gifts and the strengths that we often overlook in ourselves and which are usually what we need in order to tide us over those situations that make us feel stuck. So I guess as we go along, you'll probably get to know more and more about me. Alexi?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that impressive introduction about yourself because you're able to learn that you are a coach and a speaker and also an entrepreneur. So before we get right into the conversation today, we are going to talk about the power of authentic leadership because I believe you're an expert in this. So, so we'll just dig in with the first question. Can you define authenticity in the view of leadership according to your own perspective?
Um, Electing, I'm curious to know what you mean when you say that I am an expert in this area. But anyway, we can come back to that. We can come back to that later. I would say that insofar as authenticity in leadership is concerned, I'm really looking at, drawing on that which you came into this world with in order to lead. And what do I mean by that? I think we all come into this world with some certain qualities, certain gifts, certain strengths, and this is what makes us who we are, and this is what differentiates us from other people. And when you are leading and you are drawing on these basic qualities that you came into this world with, then you are being authentic. You might have heard maybe terms such as, a superpower. So there's a particular strength or a particular gift that you have. And when you use that gift, you do very well, you feel very good, you are thriving. So it could also be seen as leading with your superpower. Some people refer to core strengths. Some people refer to character strengths. So it's really just that quality that you don't have to struggle to use or to express or to manifest, and how you bring it to leadership.
Okay, that's well put. That is the quality or the power that you possess. Yeah, in regards to that, or something that's somehow close to that, according to you, do you believe that a leader is a leader born or made? Because I believe some people say leaders are born, sometimes say leaders are made. So according to you, when it comes to authenticity, are leaders born or made?
That's actually an age-old debate, and I'm not really sure that there is a straight answer to that. I think that it's a little bit of both. And I'm going to tell you something about myself. I have held many leadership positions in my life, and I didn't apply for any of them. I didn't ask to be a leader in any of those roles. In certain instances, I was appointed. In some instances, I was selected. In some instances, I could say I just stumbled into it because of one reason or another. So when I think about that, I imagine that the people who put me in those positions saw something in me that they believed would make me a leader or a good leader. And that suggests that perhaps it is a quality that, I was born with. But at the same time, and I believe I'm going to expound on this as the conversation progresses, I do believe that you can learn how to lead, whether it is a matter of improving on the qualities that you are born with or the qualities that you already have, or whether it's just purely a matter of, learning, just like some people play the piano very well without necessarily being taught, and they learn, they can improve that skill, or they can improve on that talent through some sort of training. And others who, they just don't have it, and that applies to me. They can still learn how to play the piano, but they may never get to the same level as the one who's got the talent plus the training. So I think there's a little bit of both. Sort of having a certain innate quality that positions you as a leader, but you can also learn to be a leader.
Okay. Still on the same, when you say that for those who are born and those who are made, because we say leadership can also be created. So in this case, in the case that leaders are made, how authentic are they? Because at some level, they are a creation. Because when you talk about a creation, there's at some point there is a point they can experience malfunctioning. Yeah. So how can we get to say how authentic can this creation of somebody as a leader can they be?
It's a very interesting point of view that you share there, and I can't help but think, what is more authentic than creation? That which is built from scratch, that which is developed from scratch, that which is not a copy of anything else. And I think I would also just like to say that authenticity doesn't mean that there is a lack of flaws. It doesn't mean that there is no potential for failure. It doesn't mean that there is no room for growth. It just really means being in touch with that part of you that's most real about you, and then using it in the most appropriate way in the position that you have been given. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. on the same note, while you're trying to describe that when it means when you are created, that when you authentic, it doesn't mean that you also have your own flaws. I also got to come across a tip, one of the tips that you wrote in your write up on the Shillings. You talked about knowing that sometimes you will be wrong. Yeah. So how best can one handle these errors or mistakes when they are in the leadership position?
Yes, know that sometimes you will be wrong. And I'd just like to emphasize, Electing, as I have said, that being authentic, being an authentic leader, or drawing on your authenticity as a leader is not to say that you are perfect. It is not to say that there are no possible improvements that you can make. And in fact, it is really saying that you have a heightened awareness of your capabilities, of the possibilities before you, and because of that, you also have a heightened awareness of potential for failure, because we are all human. So when you say how can you overcome that, it's a question of accepting your humanity as a leader, or whatever position you might be in, accepting your humanity and understanding that you are not yet fully made. Okay, that's a very literal translation of that Swahili saying, kabla hujafa hujaumbwa. We are a work in progress. You can always improve here and there. You can always learn something here and there. And I believe that authenticity has plenty of room for growth, plenty of room for learning, because it is not fixed in stone. It's a starting point. It is a reference point. But as a leader, you are called to deliver on so many different levels, in so many different ways, that if you're incapable of learning, I think then you really cannot make a good leader. So making mistakes is an opportunity to learn, and I think anybody who's been in a leadership position knows this. You can make mistakes. The question is, how do you handle those mistakes? What do you do with the opportunity that making a mistake presents to you as a leader?
Okay, that's really interesting. So what I've got, it means that as a leader, you also a work in progress, because when it means you're authentic, doesn't mean that you don't succumb to any flaws. You're just like any other human being, and you can also encounter these mistakes, right?
Oh yes. I mean, being a leader is not equal to being human. As you get.
Yeah, like we can't say you're a robot, you're supposed to work at a specific function, or because you have these specific rules, or rather guidelines that you're supposed to follow. At some point you'll make those mistakes, and you have to accept them as a leader, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So before we get to the next question, for those of us who are listening, in case you have any questions, please feel free to send them in. You can send them to me or Doso Radido, my co-host, so that your questions can be answered. Or at the same time, you can just raise your hand, then you'll be given an opportunity to ask your question. So, Jackie, you were trying to explain about authenticity. So I have this other question. Does authenticity mean that a leader should be the same person at their personal space as well as in the work environment? Because there is this issue when it says sometimes for people, when they're in a leadership position, the way they act, or rather the way they behave, is not the same way they behave outside a leadership space. When they're in the office, there's this other character that they portray. But when they're outside the office, there's also another character they portray. So when it comes to authenticity, is it something that you should carry within you along, like in every part of your journey? Like how do you get to separate yourself in a work environment and out of a work environment?
Electing, sometimes I get coaching clients who are looking for executive coaching, which is really just coaching, in the professional realm, coaching related to your work or your occupation or your profession. And they might come with, something like maybe performance, or they might be talking about time management, or they have certain difficulties related to decision making, or such topics. And the thing is, as the conversation progresses, as the coaching engagement progresses, you realize that you are not one person in the office or in the executive role and another person in other roles. It's the same body. And in fact, some of the problems that um, such a client might be facing might come precisely from the notion that they have to be two different people. And I'm going to give you an example. So you might have somebody who is a parent and is also an executive. And when they are in the office, maybe because of the office regulations or the rules or the culture of the office, they listen to their employees. They make time for them. They apologize when they have made a mistake. But when they go home, they treat their children differently. And this is something that affects their well-being, even when they are not aware of it. And so the question then would be, which of these two personas is the authentic one? Because it doesn't make sense that you have the capacity to be one thing in this situation and another thing in another situation. And I think that comes from imagining that you need to be two separate things. So I think that one of the premises of authenticity is that you are the same. And when I say you are the same, I'm really talking about the values that you uphold, whether you are upholding them in an executive role or a personal role, whether you are upholding them amongst your friends or, in the context of family, or when you go somewhere, and you are meeting people for the first time. Those values remain the same. And so for me, there's no question of, the split personality. Here I am a leader and therefore I behave this way. And here I'm not a leader and therefore I behave this way. For me, it just doesn't exist. You are the same person.
Okay, that's well explained. So before I get to the next question, I can see some of the people in the listening area, they have questions. Also, I don't know if you're in a position to let them in so that they can get to ask their questions.
For sure. Thank you so very much.
While you ask your own question.
Yep, that's right. I will allow Joan. Joan, if you can unmute your microphone, then you can ask your question. I'm trying to let Joan in to ask her question. I don't know why it's taking long. Well, I don't know why they are not able to get in, but I'll keep trying to admit them. As soon as they are in, they will ask their questions. I know they're also trying to. Okay, Joan, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. My question is in line with what Dr. Jaki has been talking about, remaining the same authentic person, whether you're in your corporate job or you're outside your corporate job. For example, if you're a parent, you remain the same leader in the office and the same leader to your children. I'm just requesting Dr. Jaki to share with me some of those values that on practical values that she carried on in regards to the way she handled leadership in the workplace and also leadership in her home as a mother. What are those values that easily blended that can help someone to balance the two?
Okay, Joanne, thank you very much for your question. Joanne, one of my core values is that is knowledge. So I seek knowledge. I love knowledge. I'm very curious about the what and why of things. So in my role as a leader, when I was faced with, especially with a situation that I hadn't faced before, I would always try to maybe do some research on it, try to understand, has it ever happened before? How did it manifest? What did people do about it? What were the consequences, and maybe even speak to people that I thought might have experienced that before, in order just to, prime myself for dealing with the situation. And this is something that I carried forward in my role as a parent. You will often hear people saying that you don't go to school to become a parent. No, you don't. But you can, gain a lot of knowledge. You can learn. You can research. You can be very intentional about, seeking knowledge about parenting. Maybe a second example is just the way I apply myself to when I make a promise. For example, when I make a promise to deliver something, then it is as good as delivered, and I would really apply myself. So in the work context, of course, those of you who are corporate executives, you know all about targets and key performance indicators, and all those deliverables that you have that you commit to, maybe at the beginning of the year, and that you are tracking and your organization is tracking. This is also a value that I brought over into my life as a parent. I make a promise to my children. It is a promise, and it is a promise that is to be kept. So I wouldn't say that because my children are younger than me, or because they are children, it's okay for me to make a promise and not deliver on it. So those are just some examples of the way I believe I conducted myself based on similar values, whether it was at work or in my role as a parent at home.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jaki. From what you've shared, I perceive that with my knowledge, with the knowledge that I need to acquire, I need to be intentional with my promises and my words. Thank you so much.
Welcome, John.
All right. We'll have youth coaching minister or ministry.
Sorry, my name is not there. I'm Abenet. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, from what I understood, authentic leaders are leaders who are true to themselves and to others in their several leadership roles or in every aspect of their life. But how can one develop this leadership style? I mean, what are the possibilities? In what ways one can develop this leadership style?
Interesting question. I would say that it begins with a very strong sense of self-awareness. Because it is from self-awareness that you understand what your values are. You understand what drives you. You understand what you are good at. It is from self-awareness that you understand where you need to maybe develop some muscles, if I may put it that way. So I would say that it begins with a very strong sense of self-awareness. Who are you? And how did you develop that self-awareness? There's feedback that you receive from people all over. You might be receiving feedback from your children, from your peers, colleagues, from your bosses, from your customers. And sometimes we ignore that feedback, especially if it is feedback that doesn't fit in with our own perception of ourselves. But very often you will find that there is a common theme that runs through that feedback. And so I would say pay attention to that common theme and maybe just ask yourself, what is it that this person has observed in me that leads them to give me that feedback? And explore that question. You can also gain self-awareness, just from doing some reflection and introspection, spending some time just thinking, what have I experienced today? What has that taught me? What triggered me when I reacted in this way or that way? So just reflecting on your experiences can also help to build your self-awareness. You could also do, there are certain assessments that you can do that help to bring some clarity or that give you some information about yourself that is not so obvious. So I think the starting point is self-awareness. I think that the second thing is being, and I'm going to use the word again, being intentional about the kind of leader that you want to be, the kind of parent that you want to be, the kind of friend that you want to be. And once you have decided that definition, whatever that definition is for you, then you go forth and be that person. And sometimes you need to learn some things. Sometimes you need to unlearn some things. So you might want to be the kind of leader that your colleagues and your peers and your subordinates feel comfortable coming to when they have a problem or when they have noticed something that is not going well and they want to give you feedback. You might decide that you want to be that kind of person. But are you being that kind of person? Are you behaving in ways that demonstrate to these people that you are that kind of person? And if you realize that you are not, then what do you need to do in order to become that kind of person? And then maybe the third thing would just be being open to learning, just recognizing that you don't arrive until as long as you're alive, you haven't arrived. So just being aware of the fact that there is always something that you can learn. There is always something that you can improve. That openness to continuous learning, I think, is another thing that can help you to, practice authentic leadership.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Before Doso asks his question, since you're talking about feedback, in a situation where, as a leader, you get a negative feedback from the people that you lead, as much as you've given it your all, I know leadership comes with a lot of responsibility. In the case that you get this negative feedback, how do you manage to maintain your cool and rise up from this negativity? Because most of us, we're always not ready to receive the negative feedback. As much as you're giving it your all, you expect the positives. But at the point when you get to receive the negatives, how do you manage to maintain your cool and rise up from this negativity and be able to heal?
Elective. A lot of people say that feedback is a gift. And I think that's a good starting point to help you accept whatever form of feedback you might get. Whether it is the sort of feedback that you might perceive as positive or negative. Just beginning from the point of view that this is an opportunity for you to learn something about yourself. already is half of the work done. And I'm not saying that you don't sometimes receive feedback that just makes you want to tear out your hair, and that makes you feel that people are maybe not being grateful, or that people are just being mean, or they want to bring you down. I think that would happen. But if you see feedback as an opportunity to learn, I think it makes it easier for you to accept any kind of feedback. But it's also interesting. Recently, I was listening to a podcast, and I don't remember the name of the podcast anymore. But something was said during that podcast that struck me as being very monumental, and I still remember that. The person who was being interviewed is a doctor who has done a lot of work on the relationship between our psychology or our attitude and the illnesses that we contract, or the way we live through illnesses when we fall ill. And he said that when you have what might be called an extreme reaction to some feedback or to an event, it would be interesting for you to stop and ask yourself, which part of me was reacting to that event or to that situation, or in this case, to that feedback. Because very often, what we perceive as negative feedback, or the feedback that makes us feel angry or annoyed, is feedback that triggers perhaps some unresolved issues in ourselves, or it is feedback that touches on a side of ourselves, or a quality about ourselves that we are not very proud of, that we are not that we are maybe aware of or not aware of, the fact that it is less well developed than other aspects of our personality or our characteristics. And that is why I say viewing feedback as an opportunity to learn is half of the job done. And even if you are not able to do that in the immediate aftermath of the feedback, it is always a useful thing to go back and think about it. That reflection that I was talking about earlier, that introspection, that, taking some time out and just thinking, what have I experienced today? What have I experienced this week? And what does it teach me about myself? Can be very, very useful to help you understand why you act or react or respond to feedback in one way or another. And if you keep getting this reaction to similar feedback, or if you keep getting this feedback, then you can see a pattern, and it is useful to try and understand what is that pattern telling you. So I would say that the most important thing is that openness to feedback. Granted, there are people who will be, out to, as they say, bring you down, or just make you feel bad. But at the end of the day, there is still something that you can learn from such an interaction.
Thank you so much for that. I can see that Ambassador Annabelle has also a question. Feel free to ask. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jaki, for the wonderful nuggets. From the presentation, one thing I get strongly is that authentic leadership can be modeled. And I love what you said, that leaders are born. So now, as an authentic leader, using the authentic leadership style, I believe it's transgenerational. So which means we can nurture it in children, teenagers, and young adults. So I would love to get your thoughts on how can we nurture that leadership style in our children, especially the teenagers, where they start getting their identity sense. And so that those are the leaders who are going to be transformed for tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, and this is actually a topic that's very close to my heart. And before I answer your question, I just like to make a correction. I didn't say that leaders are born. I said that, in response to the question, are leaders born or made? I think that there is an element of both. That it is possible that you come into this earth with certain qualities that predispose you to leadership, that other people see in you and consider you to be a leader. I don't know if you have watched children playing, even 2-3 year old children playing. Sometimes you just look at these children and you notice that there is a leader among them. You can say that this 2-year-old has been taught how to be a leader. But then I also added that it is possible to learn leadership. So it is possible for leadership to be taught or to be learned, and whether it is a question of improving on qualities that you are born with, or I think it is always a question of improving qualities that you are born with, because you are obviously born with some qualities. So now coming back to your question, how can we nurture leadership in children, and especially leadership? Annabelle, I don't think that anything speaks more to our children than our actions. We can say anything we want to say. We can talk all we want to talk. We can set all the rules we want to set in our households. But at the end of the day, it is our actions that speak loudest. That is the most important thing that our children take away from us. So then that means that it's a question of role modeling. How do you behave when things are good? How do you behave when things are bad? How do you behave towards that relative that you don't really like? When she is sitting in front of you, and when she has left your house, how do you treat the people that you live with, the people who work for you, your house help, your caretaker, your gardener? What do you talk about when you are trying to illustrate maybe when you're talking about what transpired during the day at the office? What are you emphasizing? What are you focusing on? What do you say about people who have got more money than you, people who have got less money than you? What do you say, or how do you behave towards people who go to a different church from you? All these things, at the end of the day, this is the most important lesson or curriculum that children and young people learn from you or pick from you, no matter what you say. So I think that it's really a question of role modeling, and this is a concern for me, because we see in the spaces that our children have access to, we very often do not have good role models. And you cannot protect your children from what is going on in the world. So you cannot protect your children from the, maybe I would say, negative or less than good role models around. So again, it just comes back to the space that you can control, the space that you control, and what you model in that space. But then there's another very important thing, and we often don't consider this as parents. I think that we all come into this world with some qualities, with a certain amount of potential, or with a certain potential, and it is our nature. It is in our nature to realize that potential. But sometimes we, the adults, or we, the parents, thwart that potential. We've had many conversations, and you are probably familiar with such conversations around, the things that we say are the right things to be, or the right way to be, versus the wrong way to be. I mean, a case in point, when a boy child is told, you're a man, you should not express your emotions, you should not cry. It is in our nature to express emotions. So we curtail certain aspects of the children's potential, or the children's purpose, or the children's way of being. And then it becomes second nature to them to be what they think you want them to be. So they begin to believe that you only love them if they behave a certain way, if they bring those grades, if they don't challenge you when they remind you that you promised you're going to do this and you didn't do it, and we tell them that they are being rude, that they should not talk back to adults, and things like that. And then they become so used to putting on an act that they forget who they are, who they really are. They forget to be authentic. They lose touch with their authentic self. And another example is just, when your teenager, especially your teenager, when they ask you, why don't you want me to go to this church? Why don't you want me to hang out with this person? Why don't you want me to read this book? And you tell them, I don't want to hear that language in my house. I don't want to talk about that, shut up, or whatever it is. And then when they are adults, they are young adults or not so young adults, and they are, maybe they are married, and they are having issues in their marriage, and they come to you and you tell them, talk, simuonge. So the question is, where did they learn how to talk? And so while we can role model good behaviors, we also need to be mindful of the things that we do that thwart the potential of our young people, that get them acting so as to be accepted. And when they get into certain positions, or when they are seeking certain positions, they continue to put on an act, and therefore they are not in touch with their authentic selves. And while putting on an act might deliver certain results, or it might deliver results, to the external world or to the organization, it eats away at them. It eats away at them. And you get this situation where, you might hear people saying, oh, but she didn't look unhappy. Why would she, do something crazy? It's because we have not allowed them to be in touch with themselves. And play acting has been eating away at themselves. When you buy a mango, you might cut a mango and you find that the core is rotten, but that rot was not visible on the outside. So this is what happens when you spend your life play acting in order to please somebody else. You're rotting from the inside, and eventually it destroys you.
Well, thank you so very much, Jackie. I'm not sure Electin is still in the meeting and her microphone looks muted. Help me know if you can hear me, please. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you so very much. I thought I'm the one who was out of the meeting because I'm not hearing anybody, but thank you so very much. Thanks for the responses you're giving. This conversation, of course, is getting exciting as time goes by. Today, we are talking to Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya on authentic leadership and how that can be made to happen. I want to thank all of you who have been with us since the beginning of the conversation, and I hope you are really gleaning from the insights that are being shared here today. You are talking about something that has been mentioned here previously. 3 weeks ago, we were hosting Dr. Peggy Elliott from Minnesota in the USA, and she made a statement that I remember quite well. What she said, that there's a lot of fake in leadership, and so what she called fake is what you're saying. You're calling play acting, and I think we all know that we live in the era of political correctness, so that authenticity is being chopped by the day. So today we have a lot more pretentious or play acting or fake leaders than we have real authentic people, and that's why I agree with you, Jackie, when you say that it becomes a challenge when we want to pass this value or this style of leadership to the children, because it's becoming rare by the day. So listening to what you're saying, one of the things that is a characteristic of authenticity is being consistent both in purpose, in meaning, in intention, and leadership is one place where sometimes it becomes very, very challenging to remain consistent, especially if there is pressure from around for political correctness. I want to hear your thoughts about the need. How to balance the need for political correctness and being authentic, especially in a corporate world. And as you answer that question, I'm also keen to hear how what you would recommend for institutionalizing authenticity in organizations. I know you've talked about how it can be done at personal level, but I need to hear if you have any suggestions about how this can be done and realized at an organizational level or at corporate level.
So, I have a very simple and straightforward answer to your question. About how to manage political correctness and authenticity. I don't know. I've never been able to do that. The thing is, if we are talking about values, you don't have this value today and then tomorrow it's a different value. So for me, and I'm aware that this is very personal. This is for me. I don't buy political correctness. And that is not to say that I don't recognize that there are times when you should speak up and speak out, and there are times when you ought to keep quiet. But what you do, again, comes back to your values and what you're looking to protect. If you're in a situation where there is pressure for you to act against your values, I think you get out of that situation. Because you will not succeed in your leadership role if it's just about bowing to the pressure or bowing to the powers that be. And you will certainly not survive it, from a well-being point of view. I'm not saying that you cannot be kind. Sometimes when we have the conversation, I think you talked about when you were introducing your question, and you talked about what's going on in the world. One of the conversations related to political correctness is what we say and what we can say and what we are allowed to say and some people speaking their mind and other people seeing it as being maybe discriminatory. I'm not saying that there is no place for kindness, and there is a place for kindness in leadership. Kindness is a value. If you abstain from certain behavior or certain action for the greater good, I think that is a value. But if you abstain simply because somebody is sitting on you, one person in this case, or a few people are sitting on you, or because there is a small constituency that is looking to gain everything at the expense of everybody else, then I think that you are not being consistent and you are not being authentic. And I don't doubt that there is a lot of pressure in very many situations. But I think that you and I and many people in this conversation have witnessed situations where leaders have removed themselves rather than compromise on their values. So I don't think that you have to submit to the pressure of political correctness. I don't know if there was the second part to your question. Can you remind me?
The second part was how can we institutionalize authenticity? And this is very important because the corporate culture, the corporate world has its own dynamics. Sometimes being genuine, honest, open, and open-minded is not good for business. So sometimes political correctness is what is good for business.
I'm not sure that I'm really not sure that I agree with you. You can choose how you want to do your business, and therefore you don't have to be politically correct. But anyway, let me speak to the question of institutionalizing authenticity. I'm really not sure that you can institutionalize authenticity, but I think that you can enable it, you can celebrate it, you can encourage it in an organization. And this is just the sort of organization culture that you build or that you promote. And much the same way as we were talking when Annabelle asked a question about how you treat your children, especially when they challenge you. You can make them feel shame for being honest, or you can celebrate them for being honest. So in the same way, organizations can create an atmosphere that encourages people to be authentic. You might have heard of situations where maybe a team is working together and people don't agree. So there are certain cultures, organizational cultures, where people will disagree. They will debate from here until the chickens come home to roost, but they will continue to work together. And you have cultures where those disagreements lead to one person having to leave the organization. So the way you handle conflict, because conflict will happen, how do you manage? When people are not seeing eye to eye, what do you do? What happens when somebody disagrees with you as a leader? You come and you say, we've got this tender, and we know that this job is going to cost 1 million, but we are being asked to quote 1.8 million. And business has been very bad. So I think this is an opportunity for us As guys, we're just doing a job, get whatever we are getting, and whatever other people do with that extra 800,000 is between them and God. Or you can refuse to take that tender. And what you do is sending a message to the people that you work with, to your colleagues, to your subordinates, to your, to your suppliers. Okay, maybe you don't know, but there are certain, circles in which you hear people say, "Oh, that one, don't try that one. She doesn't do things like that, or he doesn't do things like that." Then there are people that are known. If it is this, that one, I'll talk to him. I can manage him. You can decide whether you want to be the person that people can manage, or you want to be the person that everybody knows you don't do certain things. So you can create an environment that allows people to be authentic, that allows people to make mistakes, that allows people to fail and learn from their mistakes. Or you can, create an atmosphere where it's all about play acting, and the better an actor you are, the further you progress in that organization or that institution.
A lot of times being authentic is misunderstood, and one of the common phrases used to describe that reality is when you're told that you are out of touch with reality, because you are talking sterile things. You're being too sterile for the environment, and therefore sometimes you will be fought, or they'll try to like silence you and something. And I know you probably know this, that many people are always not very comfortable with authentic people. What do you have to say about that?
I have a question for you. When you say that people are saying that you're out of touch with reality, whose reality?
I like your question. Sometimes we create realities. Like when I said in the previous question, I asked you that sometimes certain things are not good for business. So there are certain realities that have been created that are assumed to be good for business. They may not be realities that align with good values, but those are the realities that allow for what people say business. For example, corruption does not happen in an environment of good values. It happens in an environment where people have decided to drop what's good and embrace those shortcuts, and sometimes they would feel like this is not being honest, this is not being authentic, this is not being genuine. But because that is what brings business, now that becomes the new reality. So when you come into that kind of a space and you are advocating for something that does not agree with that, then you're considered to be out of touch with reality.
Yeah, then let me be out of touch with that reality, and let me get myself out of that space.
You definitely have been in situations where people are people are uncomfortable with you. And actually, when I read a piece of what you wrote in the Shillitz book, Volume 1, you say that people are always uncomfortable with people like you, and sometimes authenticity would drive leadership into a space where people are uncomfortable with you. How do you lead in a situation like that?
And you know what to do. So people have got, I mean, it's their prerogative to feel comfortable or uncomfortable, to judge your authenticity whichever way, whether they consider you to be out of touch with reality, or they consider you to be arrogant, or
holier than thou.
It is. Yes. The thing is that at the end of the day, you are left alone with your thoughts and your reflections about the way you have lived your life. And one of the things that you gain from being authentic is that you can actually, as they say, sleep the sleep of a baby. Not worry about, the knock, at your gate. Not think that it is somebody coming for you. And if you value this, do so. And then this is your reality. Then you are not going to act for the sake of making other people comfortable. And this is what I mean when I talk about conversation. And the interesting thing to so is that for everything that a certain person considers this is not real, you are living in another world. There is another person who actually sees you for what you are, and I think this is one of the complexities of human nature and even our society. I think there is a tendency to think that because things like corruption are rampant, in the society that we live in, everybody is corrupt. But that's not the truth. Your tribe will find you, and you will find your tribe, and this is what I mean when I say that you ought to be consistent. Because when you are hanging out in a tribe where you don't belong, you stand out like a sore thumb. Everybody can see you're the person who doesn't speak that language. You are the person who is dressed differently. You're the person who dances differently, and even you yourself will not be comfortable. So why hang out in that tribe? And I truly believe that there is a tribe for people who are in touch with their authenticity. Yeah.
Wow, quite insightful. Wow. Today we are talking to Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya. She's trying to help us understand the whole subject of authenticity in leadership or authentic leadership. If you have a question that you wish to ask, feel free to lift your hand. We'll give you an opportunity to do so. If you don't want to speak, you can always channel your questions through either me or Electin Kunyu, and your questions will be forwarded to our speaker today. I have a little question in my head here. Are there times when being authentic is genuinely toxic, destructive, and non-constructive? I mean, you are too much with this thing of yours.
So, I don't know how you determine that a question is small or not small. Okay, I think that that which is authentic cannot be destructive. Yeah. I truly believe that. That which is authentic cannot be ugly. That which is authentic cannot be toxic. That is that feedback that you are talking about is, takes me back to, when we were talking about feedback from when the question that Electin asked, and we were talking about feedback. This is a reaction from somebody who is noticing a part of themselves that they don't really like because of the light that you are shining. This is what I truly believe, because when you are truly being authentic, nature, it is the natural you. It is how you are meant to be, and there is a place for all of us in this universe. So you're merely taking your place. You're not taking somebody else's place. So the party that sees you as being too much, I think the onus is on them to determine what is too much or enough for themselves. Yeah.
So how do we measure authenticity within ourselves or within a group of people?
Is it something to be measured?
How do we know how we are doing? If I want to assess how am I doing today or in terms of authenticity?
It's a question of how self-aware you are. Honestly, you know, sometimes you feel, or not you do so, but one might feel a certain, you know, what we call maybe a certain discomfort, or you know, when we talk in terms of red flags, or you just have a sense that something is not right. You know, your values are speaking to you, and if you continue, if your values are speaking to you and you don't pay attention, and you continue, you know, being or doing whatever it is that you are doing that is causing you to feel this incongruence that you do not react to, eventually it tears you down. Eventually it wears you out. You find yourself, at some point you will find yourself, you know, at a crossroads, and you have to decide, are you going to follow the authentic voice that's speaking to you, or are you going to continue ignoring it in the name that they're what your true values are. And this reminds me something else that maybe I should have mentioned when I was answering Ambassador Annabelle's question. It is allowing our children to make decisions for themselves. Of course, age-appropriate decisions for themselves, allowing them to experience failure, because when we make decisions for them, when we do everything for them, when we decide for them and schedule for them and plan for them and rescue them, we blunt their intuition. And this gets in the way of that awareness that I'm talking about. That awareness that makes you think, as you're having a conversation with this group of people about a certain deal, there is that intuition that tells you there is something off over here. Even if I can't place my finger on it, there is something off. When we don't allow our children to think for themselves, we blunt that intuition, and you know, you find them falling headlong into all sorts of crazy things, and you're thinking they didn't see the red flag. So the thing is, do so. I think you know, as a human being, you know when you're really not being genuine, when you're really not being authentic. Whether or not you do something about it is another matter altogether.
Wow, that's quite insightful. While you're saying this, I am beginning to imagine if how women leaders can apply this in their leadership or in their quest for leadership. We know that traditionally women have started from a position of disadvantage. They were there to be seen and not heard. So if they come in and they want to be authentic, sometimes it rubs the status quo, the wrong way. I'm just keen to hear your thoughts about how can women leaders exercise authenticity in their leadership and do it in a way that allows them to realize their goals, their leadership goals, and create the kind of impact that they desire to.
Yeah, before sorry, sorry to interrupt. Before Dr. Jaki gets to ask that question, to respond to that question, we've also seen that you've worked in a multinational corporation for some time, and at some point you are also termed like you are not really African, according to the write-up that you shared on Chileans. And you were able to overcome this because at some point you felt a sense of tension as a woman leader. And also we believe that women, when it comes to leadership positions, when they rise up to some certain level, there are also some questions that are asked. How did she manage to get to that point? So you, from in line with Doss's question, can you be able to respond to that too?
Okay, thank you. Let me do so. I think it's true that women have borne the brunt of being, having their potential thwarted, from an early age, from being told that they shouldn't speak or they shouldn't participate in certain activities. A lot of traditions that we are all familiar with are designed in such a way that they exclude the woman. So even if you have got leadership potential, it can be very difficult for this potential to be noticed. But it is also true that women are more intuitive by nature. They are more empathic or empathetic by nature. And therefore, they are in a very strong position to lead with authenticity. Recently I was having a conversation with somebody and he said to me that during the, what can I call it, the Iron Age, when human beings lived in caves, being strong and muscular was, like the most important quality. And this applied to men and women because, you had to go out to hunt, you had to protect yourself from wild animals and things like that. And then came the age of industrialization, and that muscular strength or that muscular quality became less important because there were machines to do the work. People were moving away from, the forests, or, moving away from areas where they were close to those wild animals and things like that. And then slowly the intellect became more and more important. And I think over time we have now come to a stage where that empathy and intuition are perhaps the more important qualities when it comes to leadership, when it comes to success. And I'm saying this because I want to make the point that, or to make the case that a lot of those traditions that were imposed on women that made it difficult for them to express their leadership or to demonstrate their leadership are actually being overtaken by time. So that is the first point that I want to make. And if there is a woman in this, especially a young woman in this forum, I want to say that, this is a good time to be a woman leader. But having said that, I think that authenticity is not gendered. Whether you're a woman or a man, when you're in a leadership position, people don't like fakeness. People notice fakeness. People don't like inconsistency. People don't like people, they don't like to work with or to work for leaders who don't stand for anything. And it's one thing for a leader to stand for something that you also stand for or that you like. And it's another thing for that leader to stand for something. So I'm talking about standing for something. Whether or not I agree with you, whether or not I stand for the same thing. People don't like people who don't stand for anything. And this applies whether or not it is a man or a woman. And so what I would like to encourage, if you're a woman in a leadership position, I would encourage you to not think in terms of I am being thwarted because I am being authentic, or because I'm being thwarted because I am being authentic. But really look at how can you use your authenticity to be the best of whatever it is that you're required to be. The play acting that I was talking about, I hear people talking about fake it till you make it, and that's a notion that I don't agree with. I'd rather say learn it till you ace it. This manifests in so many negative consequences on you, your physiology, on your well-being. And so you really have to ask yourself, what is the price that I have to pay, or what is the price that I'm willing to pay in order to fit into somebody's definition of what I should be? And that really is the question. That was the question for me electing, when I found myself in a situation where I felt that, some expatriates think that you can't really be African because you're smart, because you're not needy. Who said that? We have certain disadvantages, in our countries. Maybe we are not as well developed as many other people, but we have capabilities just like any other human being, and therefore I wouldn't allow myself to be put in a box because of what somebody thinks I should be, somebody thinks I ought to be. Given the same opportunities, any of us can be as good as anybody else, from anybody from any part of this world. And so I come back to the issue of self-awareness, really knowing yourself, really understanding yourself, knowing what you stand for, but at the same time being open to what you still need to learn, or what you still have left to learn. And that has always been my approach in any situation where I find myself maybe being misunderstood. I reflect a lot. I'm a very reflective person, and I'm always asking myself, what is it that caused that person to see me this way? And sometimes I recognize that I could do things differently and still stay true to my values. But sometimes I just see it as, mischief on the part of the other person, in which case then I don't waste any more headspace on it. And this is what I think we are all called to do, men or women, really be able to separate the chaff from the wheat when it comes to that feedback or those expectations from people around us.
Wow, thank you so very much. We are listening to the insights from Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya, talking to us about authentic leadership and how that can be made to happen. We have been here for about 1.5 hours now. The time is now almost a minute to 9 o'clock in the night, and we have learned quite a lot. I'm wondering if there is anybody in the audience who has a question or a comment to make, even as we move very, very close to the end of today's discussion. If you have a question or a comment, please feel free to lift up your hand. I will allow you to ask it, or if you don't want to ask it yourself, you can forward the question to Electin Kunyu or to myself, and then we'll pass them over to Dr. Jaki Wasike to be able to attend to them. Before I proceed, I'm wondering if there is any question from the audience. Election Kunyu, if you have any, please let me know.
Oh yeah, yes, I have a question here. Also, somebody asks, different people have different temperaments. There are those who are generally good, also soft-spoken, and there are also those who are considered as harsh. How can a leader use their authentic temperament to deal with those under them in terms of pressure?
Yes, it's true. People have different temperaments. And if you remember, I gave an example of, you see a group of toddlers, 2-3-year-olds playing, and you can identify, that one has leadership potential. You can see the one that is shy. You can see the adventurous one and that kind of thing. It's true. We are all born with different temperaments. I don't think that it is the role of a leader, or that a leader should concern themselves with dealing with these different personalities, but it is just a question of how do you help, because as a leader, one of your roles is to help the people that work with you and the people that you are leading to realize their own potential. How do you help these people to realize their own potential in keeping with their different temperaments or their different personalities? How do you help them to gain self-awareness, or to increase their self-awareness? How do you help them to learn what they might need to learn in order to, to be a better version of themselves? I'm thinking of a situation where you as a leader have got an empathetic nature, and we know that not everybody has that empathetic nature. So you are the kind of person who is willing to listen to people, give people an opportunity to explain themselves, or to express themselves, before you judge them. But you have been, as you are, moving along towards that leadership position, you might have been hearing things like, as a leader, you can't listen to everybody. As a leader, if you start giving people an opportunity to give you explanations, they will take advantage of you and things like that. And so you might try to put a lid on this empathetic nature of yourself, and you want to be tough, because that's what a leader should be. A leader should be tough, and then you find that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You're not delivering the results, or you're not achieving the results that you want. And at the same time, you're not at peace, because you're trying to be something that you are not. But if you ask yourself, what do I need to learn so that I can use my empathy constructively or effectively, you will be able to lead authentically and lead, and deliver the results that you need to deliver. And giving the people that you work with, or giving the people that you are leading, the same room to be, on the one hand, who they are, that is to be authentic to themselves, to their values, to their personalities, to their qualities, while helping them to see how they can use those qualities constructively, in order to do whatever it is, or to be whoever they are called to be in their different roles. That is your role as a leader. So I would say, if you approach it from the point of view, I have to deal with, and for me, dealing with, I understand it to mean I sort of have to, shape you to fit into a certain box. If you approach it from that point of view, I think it's a lot of work, because I really don't think that you can change anyone, but rather provide that space that allows them to find the growth, which is an important aspect of authenticity. That authenticity has room for growth, and growth comes from learning, from being open to possibilities, from understanding that you are a work in progress. I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know which question I had asked, but I can see Evelyn Kisao has a question to ask. Evelyn, kindly unmute your microphone and ask the question.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Jaki, for that inspiring talk. I have, it's not a question, but more of a light bulb moment based on something Jaki has shared.
Mm-hmm.
That because we go into our workplace and we hear so much of fake it till you make it, I've heard that so many times, and I remember thinking that many women, we go into leadership positions and we all suffer that imposter syndrome. And I've just had a thought, might it be because we keep hearing fake it will make it? So even when we know, when we are not faking, that is ringing in our minds. So we are thinking, okay, someone will see that I'm not genuine, I'm not authentic. So we keep having this, even when you're doing something that is right, when you're doing something the correct way, you still feel like an imposter and you never settle into that leadership position like you should.
Maybe, Evelyn. Yeah, as I said, I don't believe in fake it till you make it. I'm more of a learn it till you ace it kind of person.
I'm quoting that one. Thank you for that.
That's so lovely. Thank you so much for the question and the responses that we are getting now. We are bringing down the curtains to this conversation. Today we have been talking to Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya, talking to us about authentic leadership. We've been here since 7:30 in the evening, and the discussion has been quite insightful. Plenty of lessons to learn, plenty of nuggets to pick, and plenty of quotes to be able to quote. One of the things that I'm walking out of this place with is quotes. I think I have collected quite a number. You must think about what the price you are paying in order to fit into someone else's shoes. I think that's such a powerful statement. Confidently saying that you can still do things differently and still stay true to your values. And one other quote that you have said, which is I think is so powerful for me, is feedback is a gift. Short and very, very powerful. This conversation is brought to you by Zampal Publishers in partnership with the She Leads project. As we bring this to a close, I will, I hope there's another question that I'm looking out. I will allow Jaki to answer one more question as she gives her parting shot. Jaki, why should we even be concerned about authenticity? Why should it matter to us? You'll answer this question as you give your final thoughts and your final remarks, and then we'll bring the conversation to a close.
So we should be concerned about authenticity because the incidences of mental health illnesses are rising exponentially. And I'm not just talking about Kenya, I'm talking about the whole world. We have got a generation of people who are lost. They are lost because they have come into a culture where there is already a standard that has been set for who you should be or how you should be. And when they are not able to meet that standard, they are breaking down. They don't know where to turn. And I want to place responsibility for making a difference right at the feet of anybody who is a parent, anybody who is a teacher, anybody really who is raising a child or who is in a position of influencing a young person today. I mentioned the fact that sometimes we thwart children's potential by imposing unnecessary rules on them, by taking out our frustrations on them, by trying to get them to be something that they are not. You know, if you have a spirited child, you want that child to be calm and quiet, like your neighbor's child. If you have a child who is quiet, you want that child to be talkative, like your neighbor's child, not accepting this child as, as they have come to us. And I think that there is an exaggerated sense of what we call respect. And I say this with all humility and with all due respect to all my elders. Just because you're older than someone doesn't mean that you know better. And we are killing children's spirits. We are thwarting their potential by making them feel that if they are themselves, they are not being respectful. That the only way they can fit into this world, the only way they can fit into your world is if they become who you want them to be. But it's really not up to you. So I think we need to get over ourselves and really just learn to nurture potential. But I do acknowledge that part of that problem is because we ourselves are not able to live authentically. So it comes back to me as an individual, to you as an individual. Think about how you can improve your self-awareness so that you identify those areas that you can maybe work on so that you can live more authentically and therefore be a better role model for a child in your circle of influence. That is my parting shot. Do so.
Wow. Thank you so very much. That is the voice of Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya talking to us today about authentic leadership. She's been with us here for almost 1.5 hours. Personally, I've loved the conversation, and I can see many other people expressing here that they have enjoyed the conversation. They have loved it. This conversation is brought to you by Zion Publishing in partnership with She Lives Project, and we are here every Monday 7:30 p.m. and every Thursday 7:30 p.m. The next conversation is coming up this coming Thursday. We shall be having another woman thought leader. We are going to be engaging them as much as they are available to share insights with us, and we are doing this in the spirit of raising the conscience for good leadership amongst ourselves, and of course celebrating the work that they are doing, the women leaders are doing in our spaces, allowing ourselves to learn from their insights, from their experiences, and from their wisdom. Allow me to thank you, Jaki, so very much for coming, for sparing time. We know how much you value your time, but look what you've done to us. You've given us a gift of that and shared your insights with us. We really appreciate. And I also want to thank everybody else who made it for the meeting today. So before we go, I will call on Electing Kunyi to make some announcements, and then we shall pull down the curtains on this conversation for today. Electing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doso, and thank you so much, Dr. Jaki Wasike-Sihanya, for having this conversation. It has really been insightful. Before we call it a day, I would like to invite you to our second launch of the She Leads Volume 2, which will happen on the 29th of September at Village Market in Trademark Hotel. Aside from that, you can be able to get the registration link on sheleads.co.ke, and also Volume 1 book is available on Amazon, Nuria Bookstore, and Somanami, which is along Angong Road. And also, you can also continue joining us on our upcoming live cast every Mondays and Thursdays from 7:30, just like Doso had also shared. And those of us who are in the meeting that are willing to take part in the She Leads project, feel free to reach us via our contact numbers, which I'm going to read it to you: 0787 907 684. I'll repeat: 0787 907 684 or 0736 812 942. 0736 812 942. Thank you so much. This conversation has been brought to you by Zonpal, Publishers, and the Shillings Project. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you so very much, Electin. This conversation has been recorded. It will be available on YouTube in the next 24 hours. So if you want to go over it again, you can always find the link on YouTube, Shillings Global Network. So I'll call on you to subscribe to that channel so that in case when we place new content there, you can be able to get it. And also, I ask you to subscribe to the She Leads newsletter, which we use also to send notifications and insights to all the people who have subscribed to it. Otherwise, I want to thank all of you once again, and especially our guest for coming in and sparing this time with us. Until we meet again on Thursday, 7:30 p.m. I pray that you all have a good night and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you and good night, everybody. fact that you just want to tear out your hair and that you feel that people are just ignoring you, or that people are just they want to put you down. I think that's happening. But I that I just want you to accept any kind of feedback. But it's also I was a podcast but something was said in that podcast that struck me as monumental, and I still remember that. The person who was being interviewed is a doctor who has done a lot of work on the relationship between our psychology or our attitude and the illnesses that we construct or the way we live through illnesses when we fall ill. And he said that when you have what might be called an immune reaction to some feedback or to an event, it would be interesting for you to stop and ask yourself, which part of me was reacting to that event, to that situation, or to that feedback? Because very often, what we perceive as negative feedback or feedback that makes us feel angry or annoyed is feedback that triggers perhaps some unresolved issues in ourselves, or it is feedback that touches on a side of ourselves or a quality about ourselves that we are not very proud of, but we are not that we are maybe aware of or not aware of the fact that it is less well developed than other aspects of our personality or our characteristics. And that is why I say viewing feedback as an opportunity to learn is half of the job done. And even if you are not able to do that in the immediate aftermath of the feedback, it is always a useful thing to go back and think about it. That reflection that I was talking about earlier, that introspection, that taking some time out and just think, what have I experienced today? What have I experienced this week? And what does it teach me about myself? Can be very, very useful to help you understand why you act or react or respond to feedback in one way or another. And if you keep getting this reaction to similar feedback, or if you keep getting this feedback, then you can see a pattern, and it is useful to try and understand what is that pattern telling you. So I would say that the most important thing is that openness to feedback. Granted, there are people who will be, out to, as they say, bring you down or, just make you feel bad. But at the end of the day, there is still something that you can learn from a person or two. Thank you so much for that. I can see that Ambassador Annabelle has also a question. Feel free to ask. Thank you, Dr. Jaki, for the wonderful nugget. From the presentation, one thing I get strongly is that authentic leadership can be modeled. And I love what you said, that leaders are born. So now as an authentic leader, using the authentic leadership style, I believe it's transgenerational. It's okay to be kind that so in response to the question, are leaders born or made? I think that there's an element of both. That it's possible that you come into this task with certain qualities that predispose you to leadership, that other people see in you and consider you to be, a leader. I don't know if you have watched children play. So even 2-3-year-old children playing, sometimes you just look at these children and you notice that there is a leader among them. You can't say that 2-year-old has been taught how to be a leader. But then I also added that it is possible to learn leadership. So it's possible for leadership to be taught or to be learned. And whether it is a question of improving on qualities that you are born with, or whether it is always a question of improving qualities that you are born with, because you're obviously born with some qualities. So now coming back to the question, how can we nurture leadership, children participation in leadership? Annabelle, I don't think that anything speaks to our children than our actions. We can say anything we want to say. We can talk all we want to talk. We can set all the rules we want to set in our household. But at the end of the day, it's our actions that speak loudly. That is the most important thing that our children take away from us. So that is a question of